Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we probably should be getting ready to start our meeting. Thank you. Okay, we'd like to welcome you to our joint Planning Commission and Highland City Council work session that we're going to be doing today. Welcome, it's good to have you all with us. We're going to go ahead and begin. And Commissioner Mon, would you please give us an invocation, and then Mr. Thane, would you please do the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you.
Okay. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the unique talents that all the people in this room bring to the table and bring to the city. We are grateful for your grace, and we ask that you bestow it upon us tonight so that we listen to each other, we glean from each other, and we work together to serve our community. Help us to serve with integrity and fairness, and help us to make the decisions that can benefit the most people and do the best that we can for them. Above all, Lord, help us to make the decisions that honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oops. Oh. Idiot.
Okay, all right. So we'd like to welcome you all again, and we're going to go ahead and open this up for public appearance. This is for any items that are not on the agenda today that you would like to bring before the Planning Commission. And I would like to turn the time over to you. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
It's Liz Rice, and it's great you guys are all together tonight, so I can only have to do this once.
Could you
And
state
honestly,
your address,
I looked
Liz?
at the agenda, and
Liz, could you
What?
state your address,
oh,
please?
62, you know my address. You know where I live. 6241 West, 9680 North. Anyway, it's great that you're all together tonight. But I'm not saying I'm against this. I just think we really need to be careful what we do with the developmental code and not change it for just one or two people coming in, one developer coming in, or a cell tower coming in. Believe me, if I could get away with a tree cell tower in my backyard to get decent reception, I probably would try it because I get terrible reception. But I just want to bring your attention next to Oak Canyon Junior High. It's actually on district property in Linden. They have 3 huge cell towers. They are flagpoles, but they are the biggest poles you will ever look at. There's also a tree that has finally grown into the foliage in the river bottoms in Provo that they put there as a cell tower 20 years ago. And it was a tree, and it kind of stood out for about the first 5 years. But, you know, if we're going to do something like that, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying let's be careful with what we do. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bunch of puzzle pieces that you have no idea how to put that together. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Rice. Is there anyone else? And do we have anyone online? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you. All right.
Sorry, we're a little bit off, so I was just trying to get the slides to go.
What's happening here, actually?
So I can't do anything.
I don't know why I'm still here, but I already turned it on. Okay. All right. We are going to have our discussion items. Oh, I'm losing everything on my screen. our combined session and for the general plan workshop and discussion. And Jay's going to go ahead and introduce this to us. And do we have anyone else that's going to start it? Okay, thank you so much. And would you state your name for us?
Good evening. I'm Sam Taylor with Landmark Design, consultant for the city. And I'm joined tonight by Aubrey Larson. She'll be presenting in a minute too. Let's see. Okay. It's been a little bit of time since we met with you all at the beginning of this general plan process, and we wanted to take the opportunity to brief you on where we've been over the last few months. And
Madam Chair, can you please make sure?
So it's been some time since we met, and we've been busy at work on the general plan. And so tonight we wanted to brief you partly on our process and where we've been, and also kind of the direction that we're headed with this general plan. And hopefully we can have some valuable discussion tonight on that as we prepare to create a draft for the plan. Is a kind of update on our what our process has been. We began our journey, so to speak, last summer, and we began with a data gathering and analysis phase, as well as engaging with the public. This is honestly public engagement that's been going on for several months throughout this whole process, and overlapped with both the data gathering and also the alternative concepts. The stage that we're at right now is in draft plan development. And this is a key checkpoint with you all to make sure that we're creating a draft that reflects the vision of the community before we bring that back to you for adoption later. And some of the points that we're going to talk about and the things we've been up to, they may seem sort of not related, but they all kind of come together as one, if so to speak, similar to the stars here in the constellation. So bear with us if some of this seems a little disjointed. I think it'll all come together in a moment. Okay, that really fast forwarded. Okay, so over the last few months, we've been engaging with the community in a number of different formats and settings. We've had public input boards that we have staged at community events and here in City Hall outside the library. We've had a couple of public meetings where we've had open houses that have invited the community to come and engage with the planning team. And we've also had an advisory committee, which we have met with on a couple of occasions to discuss sort of the principles and goals for the plan that we're sharing with you this evening. We've had some really good feedback from the people that have participated in these engagement events. And I think it's given us a lot of opportunity to pause on some of the concepts that would have maybe moved forward, but getting that feedback helped us kind of retract and rethink the way we're headed with this plan. So I think what you're going to hear tonight as far as guiding principles for the plan have really come out of this community engagement that we've done. That we're trying to make a direct correlation with what the community is saying and sort of the overarching goals and principles for where this plan is headed. This process has also been informed by a 2024 resident survey which was conducted. And I'm going to let Jay speak to some of those results. Is that right? Okay. Which have also informed kind of our process and where we're headed with things. And before I give that to you, all of our community engagement we have been documenting and will be including in the plan as an appendix, as a community engagement report. So,
Planning Commission, and Council. Nice to be here with both of you groups this evening. We want to talk about some of the results of the resident survey that was, we issued it in September or October of last year, concluded it at the end of the month, gathered results through the month of November, analyzed those, and then presented those to the council in December. And we're presenting these results to you, at least the ones that have to do with land use and that will be of most interest to you as the Planning Commission. They were in your packet. I hope you were able to see those. So I won't belabor this. I think we have a lot to discuss tonight, but some of the points that we decided to ask residents about is the future of the Longhorn property. That's right there at the front doorstep of our east-west corridor on the west side of town. What happens there is very important, and so we wanted to see what people felt about that. Respondents were able to give more than one response, so it wasn't, we only want to keep 1 acre lots, or we only want multifamily housing. And so you'll see that the percentages there are more than 100%. And it's because of that ability for people to choose more than one response. But you can see that there is some interest in keeping 1 acre lots, which is in line with our standard zoning in the city. Commercial retail or office space is also of some interest. You'll see as we go through the presentation tonight what we mean, and if you read the packet, when we talk about the commercial retail or office space in Highland that would be appropriate for this area, we're not talking about a big box store. We're talking about local boutique shopping and smaller professional office. And so hopefully that allays any fears that we are looking at putting in, a Costco or something there. Not that we could, but anyway, you'll see that there is really not any interest in putting multifamily housing at that spot. And so I think that was pretty loud and clear. Another issue is, what would you like to see development-wise along SR 92? That is our largest commercial area, our commercial corridor. We have the potential to expand that, and we wanted to see what the residents' appetite was for that. And you can see that there is some interest in either allowing commercial anywhere along that road, or at least just expanding more where there is existing. We were talking with Landmark, Rob and I, about maybe not past the church building on the north side of SR 92 as you go westward from the car wash, Quick Quack car wash there. There's already a lot of existing residential that would have to be acquired and turned into commercial, and do we want to allow that, and how far? So that's another thing that we just wanted to see what the temperature was on that.
And Jay, just to clarify, that was a single response question. Yes, so it really was 70% of respondents, 72, something like that. Percent of respondents wanted to see some commercial along there. Correct. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, Doug. Age-restricted housing. We get approached quite often by developers here. Staff get approached by developers asking what type of multifamily housing, high-density residential would we allow in the city. We tell them not much, if any. And if anything, we would probably be able to take a look at age-restricted senior housing. That's something that we feel like might fit here as people who want to age in place.
Would that include assisted living?
That remains to be seen and discussed. Senior housing usually does or can include that, because as we get older, we need more help. So you can see what there was kind of you had half of the respondents saying no, and others saying yes in some manner. Maybe as long as it stays single family residential, kind of like we have in Skyview Estates, or even a more multifamily, but that was not as strong. So we had a question about ADUs. I know that's been something that the Planning Commission has wanted to discuss for a while now. We wanted to see how that shook out at the legislature last year. But you can see among the residents of Highland, there is some 37% definitely yes and 21% probably yes. So that's more than 50% have at least some interest in exploring that. And I expect that that would take more than just one discussion, and certainly more than we have time for tonight to discuss. Flag lots, similarly, you've got about 55% of the respondents were interested in flag lots in some shape or form. So probably something else we could look at as we talk about housing strategies. And that is all I have from the full report is on the city's website if you want to see some of the other questions and responses, and even the free form responses. Those are all included as well.
Jay, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I don't know if my microphone's working. So when you were talking about extending commercial on the north side of Timpanogos Highway, just if you're going west of the town center area, my understanding, UDOT owns a lot of those property along there. Is that correct?
They do,
So that's
yes.
UDOT property.
They have a tendency to buy up any property along SR 92 that comes available.
Okay.
So, we a lot of stakeholders, but it's just, we're asking questions and putting thoughts out there as we talk about what Highland should look like over the next, 10 or so years and into the future. Thoughts or questions before I turn it back over to Landmark? Okay, thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Jay. My name's Aubrey Larson, and I'm with Landmark Design, work with Sam. And it's been a lot of fun to get to know both Rob and Jay through this process. They're fantastic staff. So the next part of our conversation this evening is we wanted to look at the draft guiding principles as well as an updated version of your community vision statement. And I think the best definition for the guiding principles is in the staff report. They are touchstones for future legislative decisions. And they're really meant to serve as a framework for making those planning and policy related decisions, making sure that they really fit with what the community wants and Highland's goals. So with that, I'm just gonna walk you through what these guiding principles are, and hopefully, as Sam mentioned, it's kind of like this constellation of these different ideas coming together, and hopefully you can see how we've tried to take things we learned from the public and really integrated them into these principles, and then in turn, they will really help inform the general plan update. So the first big picture idea, the first touchstone, is to encourage a balanced approach to growth. So this first one, it says encourage balanced growth that preserves Highland's rural residential character while integrating housing options in suitable areas, promoting an attractive, cohesive community that enhances quality of life for all residents. And I won't go through all of these they're kind of like objectives and ideas that help you understand, well, what does a balanced approach to growth look like? But I'll kind of just highlight some of these. So the first statement about strategic residential infill, this reflects what we heard from that resident survey about some flexibility for ADUs and flag lots and senior housing, but making sure that low density housing is also protected when we look at those kinds of regulatory mechanisms. Concentrated mixed use. We heard that we want to protect low density, and so concentrating mixed uses, including any higher density residential, neighborhood scale retail, have this be near the town center, planned developments, highway corridors, like Jay mentioned. Cohesive design. We also heard that residents are concerned that things aren't cohesive, that they want things to look nice. So one of those strategies would be promoting attractive and cohesive development through your design guidelines and policies. Regional collaboration. This is coming from your previous general plan. I believe this was part of that vision statement, collaborating with neighboring communities, managing shared resources, really working together to preserve regional quality of growth. or quality of life. And then sustainable practices, supporting water-wise principles, sustainable land use practices, protecting sensitive lands, those kinds of things. So that is encouraging a balanced approach to growth. The second one is cultivate thoughtful economic development. This one says cultivate thoughtful neighborhood scale economic development that aligns with Highlands' character and supports the city's commercial base, ensuring the town center remains the commercial and civic heart of the city. One thing we definitely heard from the community is that the town center is the heart of Highland, and it should be strengthened, and decisions shouldn't detract from the town center. They should make sure that the town center stays that civic heart. Neighborhood scale retail. So developing commercial spaces around existing retail hubs, prioritizing this kind of small scale neighborhood retail, and then there's kind of a list of what those things mean. Targeted commercial development, utilizing targeted commercial development to strengthen the commercial base without compromising Highlands' charm or exceeding the town's capacity for growth. And then the idea of strategic redevelopment. So in the future, strategically redeveloping residential lots along the highway into commercial or office spaces, but focusing on areas near existing commercial zones. And then the last is enrich community life. Enrich community life and well-being by creating a comprehensive, safe, and accessible green network that fosters outdoor recreation, healthy living, and a strong connection with nature through enhanced infrastructure, thoughtful park maintenance, and strategic expansion. We heard again and again how important parks and open spaces are to residents, so this idea of enriching community life really is centered around parks and recreation and open spaces and those things that people really enjoy. We heard safety enhancements are important. People want to be safe, both pedestrians and cyclists, so looking at sidewalk expansions where necessary, bike lanes, making sure lighting is sufficient, and then creating well-designed crossings. Walkable access, this one is about having every resident having access to a park trail or open space within walking distance of their home. Park maintenance, residents want the focus to be on existing parks, maintain what we already have, put that focus there, but also including some amenities, better lighting, shade, restrooms, and then making sure that connections to key destinations are prioritized. Unified Green Network, working towards full integration of park trails and open spaces into a unified green network. And then strategic expansion. So if a new park or trail is needed, it should come from sufficient local demand. So with those three guiding principles, this is the vision statement. It's built around your previous vision statement, which I think was a page. We've tried to consolidate it and make it a statement that also encompasses what those principles are. So I'll just read it. Highland City Vision Statement. Highland City cherishes its roots as a bedroom community with a strong rural heritage characterized by large lots, single-family homes, and open spaces that blend harmoniously with nature. As the city approaches build-out, it is committed to preserving its unique character through balanced growth, thoughtful economic development, and enrichment of community life. So with that, I wanted to pause and open up some time for discussion and feedback and comment, and I'm happy to go back to any of the slides, and I would encourage Rob, Jay, and Sam, if you have something to contribute, please feel free to do so. Thanks.
Thank you. Any of the commissioners or council would like to give some feedback? Please do.
One of the significant concerns that I had looking through here, and it did not only appear in the guiding principles, was the continued reference to adding lodging into Highland. That when I look at the feedback that we received, there seemed to be no feedback suggesting a need for lodging. In fact, the only time it was specifically asked about, nobody responded that was something they were interested in. Frankly, it concerns me seeing it here, and it makes me worry that we are getting boilerplate rather than something that is designed to be Highland specific.
My other thought when we heard the vision statement was one of the things we always focused on Highland was parks. You do talk about your open spaces and that, but I don't know, parks was a very important thing as well as trails. I know we talked about that everyone having access to trail. I don't know if in our vision statement we want to make sure the open spaces along with parks and trails is part of that vision.
I was just wondering if some of these questions in the questionnaire were prompted by the state mandate for high-density housing, and the community is not really interested in that particularly.
So we're going to be talking about this. Let me make a comment. I think we get obsessed with this state mandate on, quote, affordable housing, which is just a code name for high-density housing. And it's a dilemma, but you have to realize we are not an island in the Pacific Ocean. We are surrounded with cities full of high-density housing. So there's lots of opportunities there. We're building not Sky Estates, but Ridgeview over here, 689 units. And I noticed in one of your plan, we'll be talking about that area, the north end of the developmental center property, more high density is what you're suggesting. The problem is I sit in city council after city council meeting and people come and complain about congestion and traffic. Well, if you build a lot more high density, you have congestion and traffic. And the question is I think it's okay for a city to have low density. And I think it enhances the quality of life. And I'm not sure why we have to push the quantity of life, because there's lots of opportunities for that around here. And unfortunately, my experience working with the state legislature is there's a lot of lobbying up there for high density housing because it's profitable. And, it's hard there isn't really truly affordable housing in Highland, because we have people come in and they make an argument for high density housing, like in this city center, and then they sell some of these small homes on postage lots for $1 million. That's not affordable housing for anybody. So I think we have to be really careful. Ridgeview, same thing. They were going to put a lot of senior housing up there. We hear this all the time. And in the end, it isn't senior housing. And they try to make as much profit as they can. And that's, capitalism and the American way. But I think we have lots of density in the city already. And I think we need to kind of maybe enhance, as you say, in the strategic plan, that we have a rural feel. Because I think when we do survey after survey, that's what the citizens want here. And it's okay if there's a city in this that's an island in all this high density, that if we have lower density. And I'd like to preserve that because I think it enhances a good lifestyle.
I just want to talk a little bit about that, just working with the state planning committee. So when we talk about planning, I don't think when we talk about high density housing, it's not focusing on the mandates of the state. When we talk about housing in our city, a well-planned city is a city in which you can start your family here, in which you can raise your family here, and in which you can retire and have your kids live here. And that requires a diversification of housing. A well-planned city is one in which you do not have to move out of, in which you can have your kids live by you, and in which offers all those amenities in order for you to stay here. And so that's why we're taking a look at diversification of housing in order to make us a well-planned city. So just, bear that in mind of what do we need to do in order to preserve being able to have our kids live with us, live near us, in order for us to be able to retire here. And also when we talk about rural cities, Highland is not a rural city. 10,000 under is rural. And with rural cities, you get benefits. Rural cities get grant access because they're 10,000 and under. And that's why they're able to be profitable without the commercialization as well. Cedar Hills has a great benefit because they are just under 10,000. They are able to access all those rural grants, and yet they have the commercialization of Walmart and other businesses as well. So they're sitting pretty, and that's how they are able to fund their parks. So we have to take into consideration we are not rural. We're not able to benefit from being a rural city.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. One of our commissioners, Sherry, couldn't be here tonight, and so she asked me to just relay. And I wanted to touch on what Doug said. She was saying that guiding principles page, it mentions neighborhood scale retail and includes lodging. I think that could be problematic since we are saying elsewhere in the update that we are trying to keep the unique feel of the area and we don't have hotels currently. Adding the term lodging seems like it's counter to that and would be creating more of a destination type feel, which would bring more traffic, etc., which is what the residents of Highland don't want in the survey. And there was another thing I noticed too is there was a term used in here that I found was kind of an oxymoron, and that was neighborhood gas station. Because, you know, the place, and then I saw it was over near the Longhorn property was the part on the map that was a suggested idea. And there's houses over there, and they're not the big old things, they're the houses that have been there, and actually she said something about this too. We need to be careful with, same page, strategic, all right, talks about allowing commercial, and office space along Timp Highway, and we need to be careful with that. There are some very nice homes along the Timp Highway. If they do that, it needs to be specific so it doesn't create commercial sprawl all the way along Timp Highway. That's this here, right here, because there are some houses that are, you know, right on there. For instance, they could add a home that's next to a commercial area, could become an office space or something, and she said as a buffer. I'm looking to see what's it. Otherwise, we're opening ourselves for having all the homes along Timp Highway being converted to commercial. But the Longhorn property also, the survey said that the residents don't want the way it was set up on you guys' suggestion. Retail, higher density senior housing, density homes surrounded by low density and all that. And she was saying the survey said that residents don't want that and want lower density residential there, so I'm not sure why they're suggesting that. But back to the gas station again too is, I feel that, you know, just because a house is older, it doesn't mean it's a dump, you know, and I think, and I saw also in here somewhere that said the poor section, which isn't right there, but of Highland, which I felt was kind of, I don't live there, but I still felt it to be offensive. I think that we need to be careful about what, you know, I mean, this poor section happens to have some, you know, multi-million-dollar homes right next to them too, so I don't know what a poor section would be, but I think we need to be careful with that and to respect the homes that are here, and neighborhood gas station, you know, that type of thing is kind of, like I said, an oxymoron, so, and also something that for the most of the residents spoke against, so. That's Sherry and mine added.
Yeah, my 2 cents worth would be, as you read this could be West Valley, could be any place in Utah. It's just sort of cookie cutter, to me at least, the way that it was communicated. Would you be willing to, and perhaps you're going to get into this later, talk a little bit about number 2? Because I don't know how you strengthen the town center but do strategic redevelopment and then targeted commercial development as well, when the town center, I mean, this is just my humble opinion, we don't have a town center. We've got a strip mall, you've got Macy's, you've got a tire shop right next to some apartments. It's just this higgledy-piggledy strip mall situation. So I'm not sure if our focus would be, or at least I think my preference would be for number 2, strengthen the town center. And if we put all of our energy into building beautiful parks, maintaining trails, creating sort of a charming community, and strengthening the town center, just trying to do those 2 things, that's biting off a lot. And I'm not even sure we can chew all of that.
There was a lot of feedback about increasing the library, and it is a constantly used thing, but something that could be a bigger branch, whether it goes up or even in a new location. So those kinds of things to create more of a town center so that it's not just an excess yard for the residents of Toscana or some of these other apartments that are just surrounding it, that it actually is a community center. Before everything was finished, I participated helping with the Highland Fling, with the kids' night, and different celebrations that we would hold here. And it seemed like we had more attendance. Once these apartments all come in, it kind of closed it off just for them a little bit more. So some way to open it up and enhance a community center, I have to say I agree.
I'd like to also add, I forgot to say, something that made me, in my feeling all along, kind of chuckle was Highland's unique qualities or unique whatever, and that's exactly what we don't have, I feel. We are a hodgepodge, I agree with. And this little last bit that we can do now, I feel like if we can put as much emphasis on pulling the city together, giving it a character, or giving it an identity or a flavor, as someone had said once, you know, just to make it unique. I don't see the uniqueness of Highland right now. It's just a hodgepodge of homes and buildings and, you know, all over. So I love that. I love the town center emphasis, and then the surrounding parks and trails and whatnot emphasis, keeping it all in one area and not extending it all the way down. You know, again, you guys have heard me say this before, turning it into State Street in Orem or, you know, something like that is not attractive and certainly wouldn't be a unique identity.
I was wanting to comment
Would
on
also
something
like
that
to-
kind of builds on what Audrey was talking about. And that's a mention, even a focus on, you know, mentioning, you know, Highland City and Highland City residents' desire to have an intentional and focused development of public facilities that encourage growth and education and the enrichment of citizens. I think that, you know, that includes the library, that includes, of course, that includes parks, and we have, like, you know, necessary and deserving emphasis on the parks. But I think including, you know, that there is an appetite in the city for some kind of small scale community center. And thankfully, we've been getting away from this rec center kind of discussion that just absolutely is not tenable. But I think something that builds upon all the great work that our library is doing and expands programs and services and facilities that are available. I think, you know, part of that is also improving and growing and developing the Highland Fling, you know. So I think I like the focus on parks and open space. And I think we include into that the other public elements of the city that similarly enrich and develop the lives of the residents. And I think the one other thing that stuck out to me, I'm always thinking about, and Scott touched on this, whenever there's any discussion of development in the city, almost the first talking point seems to be traffic. What kind of traffic is this going to bring? The amount of cars, the you know, speeds, and everything that accompanies traffic. And I liked seeing some of these buzzwordy kind of elements to this, specifically, you know, neighborhood scale retail. And there was one other one in the page before, but again, I don't know what the appetite of Highland City residents and council and everyone else is, but I would like to see neighborhood scale retail that extends outside of the town center, something that reduces traffic. Small little boutique-y you know, street corner grocery stores that residents can actually walk to instead of having to drive to either the city center or outside of the city. And which is part of why I was leaning towards elements of mixed use within the Longhorn property. But it would be cool to be able to get some of that. I mean, if Myers were to open a tiny footprint little corner grocery store by Skyview or over around Canterbury or somewhere like that. This is kind of like this extension of what they have going on in the town center. I think those kinds of little stores are so charming and really get people driving less and walking more. My 2 cents.
One concern we look at when we try to do like a little neighborhood node is we are a large lot subdivision. Does that make sense? And so your concentration of trying to say we're going to put a little grocery store over by Canterbury, you don't have that concentration of things. And I think when I looked here, this one thing, it says concentrated mixed use. Okay, where is this? Okay, it says higher residential areas, neighborhood upscale retail. Where is that in the city? You're defining it. So my concern is we're putting a statement out there, and you're going to have a council or residents out there trying to find out where that's at. Okay, we do say the town center, the planned development, suitable highway corridors. We're saying that along our highway corridors, we're going to put mixed use in this document. I don't know that's a true statement. I'm not sure it's a true statement that we're trying to put mixed use in a neighborhood scaled retail. That's what I'm going, you've got to be careful, because when I talk about guiding documents, this is where residents come to, and they're going to come into the council and say, in here you say neighborhood scaled retail. I want a grocery store now in Canterbury. That's what you just told them. Well, that's not, if that's the council, is that what we're telling them, that we want a neighborhood retail scale throughout the city? Where do we want it at? Because what you do is you're giving them guiding principles to say, oh, along your highway corridor, you can have mixed use. I'm not sure that's what we're saying, but yet your document states that. I mean, I'm just saying, we've got to make sure your document is correct here in what the true statement is we're trying to make. Because right now, it sounds like we're trying to encompass, and then all of a sudden a resident comes in and starts advocating the councils and planning commission. Well, your document states this.
Sam, you need to speak into the microphone.
I was just saying, I think it would be good for us to move forward to look at the future land use map concept, which I think will highlight some of the areas where we talk about some of these specific issues.
But before you do that,
yeah.
For me, the concept, I think where our town center is probably not the best location if you put commercial on the Longhorn.
Mm-hmm.
People, I mean, if this went out today, we're going to get a lot of applications to put commercial right at that, because that's a prime location.
Yep.
And we already have a town center that's not the best location because it's kind of driven back into the mountain. And now that's going to starve because people that are there are going to cancel their leases and move up closer to Smiths.
We have to be careful not to cannibalize it.
Well, yeah, which I've brought up in several of the meetings, and in the drawing that I just saw here, it seemed to totally ignore the fact that sprawling, doing that, will suck business. I mean, we're trying to get that one center going, and you start doing this, and the town centers, just people are going to move their business. It's not just that new's going to come in. The people in the town center are going to move out there because they want to be in a better corridor. And so if I were to see something in here, if those were just placeholders, and in here the guidance is if the town center fills up, like if we run out of commercial in the town center and we developed that other big parcel that's gone in and it's just thriving, right? Then we open it for consideration, start coming towards, the church, expanding those areas. But if you release this, they're just automatically just going to start doing that because those are prime locations. If you had to do it over again, I'd probably put all that commercial town center right across the street from Smith's and then put all that nice residential back into the mountain. But that's not what happened. And you guys keep putting stuff along the corridor, that's going to kill the town center. And I know you don't think it's a town center, but that is what it is. I mean, that's the concentration of commercial is right there. And the second you start going up these corridors, we're going to kill that little town center. So and because it keeps coming up, it's being driven somehow. I don't know who keeps driving this, but the compromise that I would see in there, that there's guidance in here to not allow it until the town center is fully thriving and surviving. Then you start going out like this versus just, I mean, like I said, if this is approved today, we're going to get a bunch of applications, commercial. The Longhorn's going to come in and want to go commercial right on that corner because that's a prime renting corner. And it's just going to start pulling business out of those areas. And so I would want to see the guidance in there that it's not a free-for-all. It's, wait, the town center is important, which you mentioned in here, but we don't consider sprawling it until the town center, we have the ability, is they're going to come in here and say, the plan says this, because that's how they've come in with that before, and we say, well, the general plan doesn't allow it. Now it's allowing it, so they're going to come in with it, right? I want to have the ability to sit up here and go, yeah, but we also gave guidance that if the town center is thriving, then we'll start considering sprawling out. So if those are placeholders for future, after, town center is strong, I would be supportive of something like that.
May I just ask a question? Just in general, how's Macy doing, Macy's, and you sort of see the little shops flipping alloy training in what used to be Randy Paul's old strip mall, but I don't know who owns it now. The sort of Macy's strip mall. Are they all thriving, or
some appear to be doing well, just like most businesses. Some do well, some don't. It depends on how they service, how they market, what you're going to have. You bring this up. I always I call it the dirty dough syndrome. You're going to have a dirty dough open and one that closes. Well, if Dirty Dough would get out there and knock doors, go to establish relationships, go to the high schools like we see Roxbury, they might survive. But if you're going to have a retailer that just goes and sits and waits for someone to come in their door, they might not survive. And so it comes down to entrepreneur spirit of how they do in their store. But yeah, we're going to have traditionally turnover. Highland Mains, you brought that up. I think the big Highland Mains, they're moving dirt right now. So it is a concern. We have a large development of Highland Mains coming in. What Jerry's bringing up, if we also start bringing it out to where they could see it better, our Highland Mains is sitting back behind. They are already at almost a harder situation, but they're bringing a nice development. We have attracted by our zoning the Highland Mains to come in and do it the way that they're doing it, because we're saying that's the only commercial corridor is where the Highland Mains can go. And if we open it up to somewhere else, everything back behind that Highland Mains will dry up. I mean, you'll go downtown Salt Lake. The second city center opened up. All of a sudden, everything went out of Rio Grande and moved over there. So,
I'd like to also comment on the fact that we are a dead end. That's the word I've always used, and it's in a good way, not in a bad way. When people noticing on the comments from all the people that from this study, there's so much emphasis on parks and trails and green and all this kind of stuff. I think, honestly, when most people come here, as they're driving in, they see the mountains, they see the beauty, they see the little cirque, the little corner that we live in, and then buy and they live here. And we're not ever going to be, people aren't going anywhere. They're coming here and stopping. They're coming up here and stopping. And there's nowhere to go. So if we turn this into a city, the city type, big city, a lot of them came from big cities, and that's maybe where some of our comments came from, because they're so used to certain things that a small, beautiful community that's looking to find an identity to go with whatever may not have. I mean, we're close enough to a lot of other things. We don't have to have everything here. There's 1 billion hotels right down the street. There's a commuter road that goes right to them, So, there's certain things that a little small town, or even though we're not a rural town, we're a small town, that's the feel that most people came in here for. And that's probably what our identity could be, but that's what's not happening. And and if we can just finish off cohesively enough to keep it, or to make it have that quaint, or that small town, that livable, fresh air, yada yada town, that's just doesn't involve, neighborhood gas stations or whatever. I'm just using that one because I found that a funny concept. But that's just something, and I saw that in the remarks from the people, that we've been studying.
Before we move on, the hodgepodge part of this discussion is real, and But in the midst of all that, we have one sense of community that is thriving in Highland, and that's our library. And the concept of imagining that to be the center of expanding that, maybe a new location, certainly a bigger building, we have it in place. And I think drawing on that and including in that the opportunity for that community, because if there is any sense of community in Highland, it is the library. I don't know what else competes with it. So anyway, I see the library as being a fundamental part of our growth here.
I just want to put out there, and this is a curiosity search. So with the Highland Senior Center that is being renovated, and that is also another hub for Highland things and events, lots of recitals, community course classes taught there. Can someone clue us in on what the plan is there? I just don't know a lot about what's happening there.
So what you're seeing going in is our park maintenance building. The big thing for the community center, though, is we added parking. When you'd go to that community center, you used to have to park out on the road. And I don't know if you guys have incorporated that, but we have now went in and says, hey, we've almost doubled that parking from, I think it was about 18 to 20 parking spaces to now to 40 to 45 off-road. That will help that community center thrive a little bit more. But yeah, we are building a big maintenance building there.
Is there any renovating going on for that building?
There already has been. They've put in new carpet. They've put in new paint. Now, are we going to be gutting the building and putting it at this time? No, but we have renovated inside with carpet and paint, and then they have a new stage. The Arts Council has spent some time there, putting in a new stage. The question is probably downstairs. What do we do downstairs? Where there's a classroom, there's an open room down there. The Arts Council is using it. We have several others that want to come, but our Arts Council is very, when we talk about things going on well in the community, we got a library doing well. Our Arts Council is doing well, but they're kind of out on their own. They're not getting a lot of funding from the city.
And they're just kind of promoting their own thing, and people are coming.
But one of the things we do need is seniors. Our seniors are asking for, can they come somewhere? Mm-hmm. And the Arts Council is actually doing once a month things, but that's our community center. The library is having a hard time because they are starting to fill up their activities. They're having 60 people show up to all of their story times. We're seeing, which is a good problem. So, and we could always go on about some of that stuff.
Thank you so much for your comments. They're incredibly helpful. And I hope you understand, we're just trying this on for size, and some things probably don't fit and might need to be adjusted. And hopefully some of your questions and comments will shed some light on these bigger picture ideas with the future land use concept, and hopefully answer some of those questions. So this graphic is meant to represent the various plan components. And I like to refer to this as comprehensive community development, and the idea is goals and progress made in one area should interact with and support other parts of your general plan. So for example, if we look at economics, what are the things you need to strengthen your commercial base in order to pay for parks and recreation maintenance? Or if we're looking at land use and different places for perhaps detached ADUs or flag lots, how does that meet some moderate income housing goals? And can that in turn help with water conservation with those smaller properties? So hopefully all of those ideas you'll see kind of, we're trying to fit those pieces together so that things pencil out in the general plan as well as geographically. Okay, thank you. So this is...
Say, hey, I have a real fast question.
Yeah.
Wes, you brought up a neighborhood local grocery store. We all are starting to see, we're all getting Walmart delivery. We're starting to get Amazon delivery. Our sales tax, we've started seeing increasing where other communities that have commercial, if you want to say, brick and mortar commercial, are actually, they're leveling out or dropping a little bit. We haven't been. I don't know if there's a way, as we look at our commercial going, okay, is there a delivery hub? I know we can start thinking of things, but You get a little area where you could have a little grocery area where they could come and hub out from there. But we're wondering about sales tax. That's a big question I've been asking Rob and Aaron is, hey, is the sales tax, if I order at Walmart, are we collecting sales tax here in Highland, or is it there at the store where they're picking it up? If it's a warehouse, it's delivery. If it's a grocery store, it's that Nexus location. And I'm going to defend that I think Walmart's now turned into a warehouse of delivery, and we should be getting the sales tax here because it's warehouse based and not grocery store based.
And then there's also the issue of shared zip code.
We've talked through that too. We know we got to go out. We actually talked about that all last week as a council. Me and Scott have talked all about that.
We've talked a lot about that, and we think we have some, we're going to have to go through probably federal legislators, but we've got a senator and a House of Representatives, 2 people from Alpine that I think will be willing to probably help us, because we've hit a roadblock at the Postal Service. Yeah.
Just on the general plan, is it, potentially, could we broach the zip code issue as part of the general plan, that we see this as being, because quite honestly, so far, what I've seen with the general plan, that a term comes to mind that I don't like, which is pedestrian. It just seems a little too generic and not specific to Highland. Now, we've talked about a lot of things. I know a lot of that will be tweaked. But could we include in the general plan the reality of how important our own zip code would be, and have it be one of the goals of the general plan?
It's a community identifier.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's like an element of strategic redevelopment. You know, there is that little line item there, but it kind of talks about along the Timpanogos Highway corridor. When we talk about redevelopment in Highland, it's, you know, large lots turning into small lots, and we're kind of worried about when we tweak and change certain parts of the zoning ordinances and the code and stuff, how is that going to affect redevelopment 20, 30 years in the future? And so I like seeing the emphasis on strategic redevelopment. I think that it's hitting the wrong elements of what Highland's going to be facing in a couple decades when it starts to really come under some redevelopment. You know, homes being, you know, leveled and rebuilt, and lots being, you know, carved up, and, you know, we want to make sure we're thinking forward for that, and not just you know, the commercial along Timpanogos Highway or how redevelopment affects us economically.
I think Wes bring up a good question. We're going to have what some would call a tear down. We're starting to see that in certain areas. I mean, there's several homes across from Highland Elementary that was recently torn down and new homes were put in. We're starting to see some of that. But I think the question is for the Planning Commission and Council is, if we're saying along the corridor of SR 92, we're going to say, are we envisioning that they're taking those homes down and building little office complexes? Or are we seeing the homes convert into an insurance place? I mean, that's what's the envision there? Are we saying, no, they're going to take out 3 lots and go build a doctor's office or something? Or are the existing homes staying? Because that's what I think that's what our guiding principles would kind of give.
Can Highland afford to purchase the homes? Right? So that's kind of something else that, as we look down the road, that we are not in excess budget anywhere to do those kinds of big things. So I just think we need to be kind of realistic about it too.
Don't you bond when you go into a redevelopment district?
So there is redevelopment money out there that you can go and it depends on what the federal government maybe has and what might be out there from an association of government. Like right now, there's corridor preservations they're doing. You know, one of the things that I can't remember who brought it up, but along our corridor, we also need to address the state owns a lot of that property. Are they anticipating widening SR 92? So here we are starting to give guidance to say, hey, let's redevelop this, but the redevelopment might be a road widening. You know, because there is a reason the state's keeping a hold of that property. They anticipate something coming down the road, I think. Does that make sense? They would have diversified themselves of those homes, but they haven't.
And that also adds to traffic flow because traffic congestion, because again, this road is now 5 lanes or whatever it is, and it's ending, it dead ends into its almost 2-lane mountain road. You know, it's not even 2-lane, but we have to make it one going through. But that's the other thing to keep in mind. You know what, if we have like these major highways coming in from all the directions, the congestion's right here. So.
I'm really struggling with the conversation going on here because what I'm hearing is we have a dozen conflicting ideas that we're all number one and we've got to get them done. If larger lots and bedroom community are the number one, we have to give up something to achieve that. And I wanted to add on to what the mayor started bringing up. Are we looking 25, 30 years down the road? I anticipate I will never go in a grocery store ever again. I'll order it and it'll come to my house. I don't care where the grocery store is. It doesn't even need to be in my community. All I know is it'll be at my house whenever I want it. Are we using future mindsets, changes in community to address those types of needs and allowing us to keep our large lots, bedroom community, or whatever our number one thing is? Because too many competing things, we can't address all of them. And Ron, as much as I love the library, I would love to live in the library. In some places, libraries are going away. Nobody's using them. It's not here, I agree, it's not here. But in 20 years, it might go away.
That's exactly what I thought until I got involved. I'm on the library board, and it is unbelievable to me, the community that library has created. And it's just a matter of being aware. I was not aware, and I would have said flat out, I said this in the board meeting, where's the library going to be in 10 years? It probably won't be around. The library may be the only thing around in 10 years. I mean, honestly, I'm really astounded at what we're doing. And we're funded like 1/4 of what other libraries their size is. So funding is a real problem. But what this library has done with the funding they have, I invite you to get involved and learn about it because it is really amazing what they're doing.
And I really appreciate that. And I apologize. I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole, but what I'm trying to point out here is the world has changed from COVID. The culture, the mindset, we're trying to hold on to something. If that's whatever that is, let's focus on that and not.
But I think what
focus on
transferring,
that.
the library has changed in its programs. People are coming for activities and programs, but the books, they're now downloading onto Kindle. I don't know if I understand the collection, but that electronic collection is growing. And so we will also use our library differently. If, like you said, Ron, I would have thought, hey, that's dying. I'll be honest, it does depend on who the city hires. Because I will tell you, if we go back to what we call the troubling years, it was headed down a wrong path. But yet, our EverDrive, where people are able to download and get things, however, there's still kids that want to come in and check out books. There's programs that are expanding in the library. So it's that modification. We have to look forward. How do we see this modification? Do we see our seniors wanting to still get together, or are they going to all just be on a Zoom call talking to each other? You know, I still think the gathering together is important, and that's what I think we're seeing in the library.
I'd like to ask Doug to give us a report on our library during COVID versus what you've heard from other libraries.
Yeah, many of you have probably heard me talk about this before, but I was just amazed during COVID that I have friends who live in the Portland area, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the Portland area, that county has a really good library system, and they were jealous of us here in Highland because we had a library that was still open and was still loaning books and was still functioning, and theirs were all closed down. And that's because of the support that the library director, the library staff, the city gave. And I think it's indicative of the fact that one of the reasons our library is thriving is that we've realized that, no, a library can't just be a big room with a bunch of books in it. And I suspect that the libraries that are closing down haven't figured that out.
Yeah, on the library thing, I guess we could go all night on the library thing. But I agree that, you know, I've been actually noticing a lot of libraries are successful, and that's exactly because they are diversifying. You know, they're keeping their books, but they're adding all these classes and different other things that are going on that kind of relate to the education and stuff. But I think it's going to be a long time before books are gone. I really do. I think that, you know, and I don't know if they'll make a resurgence like they did when we had only books, but I think it's going to be quite a long time. I know a lot of people, and my kids and my grandkids, that love reading a book, you know, holding it and reading it. And I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, and they love reading books. So it's going to be a while. But libraries are being smart like ours, and the ones that they're doing fine. And Lehigh's building a new library right now. You know, they need more space. And we can put ours across the street, put our senior center in here. We'll be all right, or something.
I see from Chris it's time to keep it going. Okay, so we'll try and be quick. This is your existing land use map. This is not zoning. It is how Highland is today. This is how land is being used today. I'll point out a couple of things. This isn't that different from your previous existing land use map. It's just been updated. Low density residential is that kind of lighter yellow color, and that is anything less than ½ acre. The orange color is a parcel that is a ½ acre or less. We just wanted to show that there was a little bit of nuance in the residential uses in the city. But it's medium density in Highland. The other thing I'll point out is the lightest brown color represents agricultural land, vacant land, or underutilized spaces, and those will be reflected in the future land use concept. Thank you. Okay, so future land use concept. If we got out our magic crystal ball and looked into the future, 10, 20 years, how our land use is going to change. So this is meant to represent an idealized snapshot of the future of the city. It's more generalized. For example, residential uses, we've just kind of lumped those together into that lighter yellow color that includes both low and medium density. We're gonna go through each of these different spaces that are designated with a letter. And then I'll try and describe some of the things we're thinking about for big picture ideas. And hopefully, again, they'll answer some of your questions and comments from earlier. Can you be trusted? Okay, so first of all, generally, looking at residential areas, in the future, most of that vacant land will likely be residential. The darker yellow is meant to represent those vacant parcels that could one day become residential, including your annexation boundary in the northern part of the city. Regulatory mechanisms that allow for detached ADUs and flag lots could help facilitate some infill development, and that in turn will support your moderate income housing strategies. So that is meant to represent kind of these bigger ideas for residential areas. And then we've included some imagery of some external ADUs. They could also be smaller homes on flag lots.
Why is the Longhorn property not considered residential?
We wanted to make it distinct from the general residential since it is being seen as a planned development along with the state-owned property. Okay.
I'd just like to note that on this slide, we talk about detached ADUs and flag lots could be adopted. Whereas in the guiding principles, it specifically says that they will be. And those two probably ought to match.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Okay, so this is letter A on that future land use map, the Highland Town Center. And again, this is the commercial and civic heart of Highland. Ideas for this place, it should continue developing as a mixed-use center, and that includes residential, commercial, office, and institutional uses. And then looking at the Highland Marketplace in nearby areas, this could offer a northern expansion someday, whether that's an expansion of your overlay zone or if it's more symbolic in nature. And then those two symbols at the top, they're kind of a pink color, are meant to represent perhaps these areas, these parcels would make sense to be rezoned to residential professional to expand some of that transitional commercial base between the low density residential to the town center. And then again, some imagery meant to represent your town center And then I also included some images that show what residential professional could look like.
So this is you guys saying, hey, this is where it could go. This has not been council or the public putting dots. How is it determined?
This is based on feedback from community engagement as well as city staff and our advisory committee. Other questions on this one?
Can I ask a quick question? I know we're talking about this letter in particular, but I just wanted, in my vision, to find out what has gone on with the concept of expansion on Alpine Highway instead of this, the North County Boulevard expansion into Alpine. I'm just curious as far as commercial and mixed use along that highway. Is there any further discussion? I have only heard, this last year has been a rough one as far as coming to council meetings for me. So I was wondering if there was any progress. No. Okay.
I think one of the challenges with Alpine Highway is that the city to the north is going to keep it minimal as far as access, and the city to the south is doing likewise. So we're in the middle. We could put 5 lanes in there, but it's, you know, we're going to go into 2 on both ends. So we're kind of constricted, where SR 92 is a thoroughfare to get to North County Boulevard and to get into the canyon.
Can I ask a quick question based on that last slide with those 2 pink asterisks? Do those represent a couple of very specific locations that either the advisory committee or feedback or the city have pointed out? Because I'm having a hard time pinpointing exactly.
They are specific, but for the general plan, we wanted to make sure that they appear more general.
Yeah, so Wes, do you know where Mark and Jeannie live, or Fred Booth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those homes just behind the Chevron.
Okay,
up
so like
to the church.
on the west side there.
It would be on the east side of the road if you're heading into Alpine.
And
Alpine.
on the east side also, I mean, the west side, we have houses right past the gym. There's houses in that.
You're kind of pushing up to both the churches there. You go up to
Yeah.
11200 where we have a church, and then you got the white brick church. I mean, so it's those homes that kind of fit out east of the white brick church, and then everything south of the church there on 11200 and SR 92, I think is what they're earmarking here.
Just a educating question. Who controls the Alpine Highway in terms of access? It's not UDOT, or is it us? Oh, so it is UDOT that dictates who can turn left or right and crossing and all that. Yeah, that's tricky.
Just a little historical fact on that. Earlier when I was on the council, UDOT, when they expanded North County, they bad wanted to turn Alpine Highway into a road that was controlled just by the 3 communities. We actually kind of fought back a little bit because we didn't have the funding to maintain that road. So it's still a UDOT road. But they at one time wanted to give it to the cities. Or turn it over to, not give it, but yeah.
Thank you very much. I was asking more just about our ability to control egress, because it's quite problematic. I mean, even for the M&G guys, the Highland Mains, that's very complicated setup.
Oh, now I did it. There we go. Is that the right one? It's very sensitive. Okay, so looking at the Longhorn property, back to your question, this is a different color because we're in conversations and looking at what the public said. We're envisioning this could be a planned development. And the big idea for this space is to have a higher density, whether that's high density, upscale senior housing project. And that would then transition into some smaller lot single family homes, and then again, feathering into larger lot single family homes that would act as a buffer for the existing homes behind the property. And then since there would be additional people in this area, you could include a neighborhood or mini park which is represented by that green symbol, and that could serve residents in this area and address service gaps. We noted that most residents are pretty close to a park within a half-mile, but there is kind of a gap along Timpanogos Highway, which makes sense. And then to the commercial comments we had earlier, we're really just looking at two very specific spaces for very small-scale neighborhood retail, and that would be the corner of the Longhorn property or the property east of the mortuary, whether it's both, one, or neither. These are just some ideas that were tossed out. So that's what those red symbols represent.
See, and the one thing, we had a survey, 50% said they want to keep it large lots. And so the assumption is, hey, we want that this is something to be desired. This is the one parcel. If you're asking about the whole general plan, here it is. This is the parcel that if you want to fill city council up, this will be the one that will fill it up. This is the corridor into the city. This is the first thing they'll see in the city. So a lot of people have attitudes about it. This is one that Bull River has agreements on buffering away from it. We have 2-acre lots, and my understanding is the property owner, and I've heard them vocally state this, that they understand they have to buffer from that. I mean, so there's a lot of, they already currently have 1-acre lots at the very far north end of this parcel. This will be the one that will be hard. As we go across by the cemetery, you brought up by the cemetery of Mortuary, that comes off a hill. The access point is, I believe that UDOT will only give an access there at Anderson Mortuary. And if we try to access, we only have so much there by the light. We can pull back for access, and it comes off a hill. So if we put commercial, how do they enter the road there with some safety? I'm just saying, it's easy to put a dot there, but once we start looking at reality, how it now gets to be programmed is different, as well as all stuff that we've shown when there was plans here on this. If you want to fill traffic, this is the intersection of 6,000 West and SR 2 that the traffic will fill. Everything we've shown when they went and did anything with commercial here, we went an E like that. And that's where Liz made a comment about traffic. Everyone talks about traffic. I'm not saying we're not going to have traffic, but this is where it starts to slow down. Right now, everyone can kind of move through here. Whatever we plan to put here, we'll start to slow traffic. This will be our corridor that everyone sees Highland. Guys, we can't mess this one up. This is the parcel we can't mess up. This is our signature parcel.
If there's anything we've learned from the survey, it is that particular question should have been one choice. I mean, we have the two top answers were polar opposite of each other, exact opposite. So choose one. So what we've got is a little schizophrenic in reality. So how do you interpret that? Well, you can say some commercial with more residential to go with it. I mean, it really is unfortunate. It's a lesson learned. In the future, when we have something so significant, so important for our future in Highland regarding the general plan, that we not give multiple responses, because they are polar opposites.
Or you ask the same question different ways to try to get so you should be asking, hey, do you want this to stay residential? Then we should ask 2 more times in the survey, do you want this residential? And what do you want? I mean, just to make sure that we get the right information, because right now we have 50% that say they want this, and yet you have people, 33% saying they want mixed use. Which do we take? I don't know coming out of that survey still what to do.
So, and the property owner gets to pick. So if you put commercial in our general plan, he's going to pick commercial.
Correct.
So if you put it there, it's going there. It's not going to be, well, maybe we are going to do
Correct.
these other things. If you put commercial, because if you can figure out the traffic, I don't think that ever works, but if they figured it out, it's going commercial. So if you put it there, it's going commercial. It's the primest location for commercial in Highland.
Yeah, and to an earlier discussion, we have these romantic notions of Annecy or some lovely neighborhood boulangerie. This is, not to be silly about it, but this is America, folks. You're going to have a cookie cutter, some sort of chain that's going to go in there. We won't have the luxury of having some boutique type of thing.
We'll get another Fizz with a cookie store with
But also, I'm looking at the southwest little asterisk, and that is a very small piece of property that's not privately owned, just to the east of the cemetery. It's like the corner. I mean, we have like fruit stands there now that come and, come and go. And that even causes traffic, but I love it because I live near there, so I go. But that's something to consider also, is like, whatever we put there is gonna be that, and then the houses and, backyards around it and stuff. So that's, to me, that is, I don't know, maybe we should ask if we want a permanent fruit stand or a market or something there, I don't know, because people visit there, but I just can't imagine putting a building there in that one little corner with nothing, with houses around it. So I'm not sure about that piece.
So could I make a little comment? I sat on the council when the people who own this land, the Pattersons, came forth with some ideas how to develop the Longhorn property, okay? One of the ideas was an assisted care living. They talked about a gas station, I believe, down there, and some small commercial, and then, kind of medium residential. We packed the chamber with people who were convinced that they were going to put Home Depot there. And there was a joke, 2 or 3 years ago on April Fool's where they put a sign for Walmart. But it's a real controversial, and I think the tendency of the neighborhoods through there is to kind of lean towards more residential than a lot of commercial. Although, if you're coming into the city, it makes sense for commercial. But there was at one time where all that area where Smith's Marketplace is was supposed to have been in Highland. There was a 3-2 vote that kept it out of Highland back in the 90s. So I don't know. It seems like the city as a whole wants more residential than commercial.
I first want to just acknowledge, like, we're very aware of these competing issues and political issues around this property. We've spoken directly with the Pattersons. So, and I hear all the competing ideas on this. I think we've been scratching our heads a little bit, and our initial approach when we saw this was we saw the frontage as being ideal for commercial, largely because it could serve as sort of a buffer zone for that residential taking up the bulk of the property. We've sort of retracted from that, partly because we didn't want to cannibalize the town center, and so we kind of dialed back to this idea of just putting something at the corner. That said, this is still just a concept. My question to you is, if we really feel like we don't want to put commercial on this site, that's fine. What are the feelings about the various housing types that have been proposed? I'd like to have more conversation around that.
Okay, here we go. I'll give you, I'm going to paint the picture, guys. Because this is the corridor that everyone sees when they enter, they had originally had proposed where the home's at to have some small single-story type of offices. I think they're at 6400 West, something lower lying, if it be for like, title companies or insurance companies, something there. But I see everything bordering along Bow River. They need to do a buffer of a green zone because of Bow River with 1 acre lots. I think it'd be a perfect area for senior housing. I think our seniors in Highland are they don't want to take care of the yard, but that doesn't mean that they don't want open space. And so I think if we put senior housing, single story along there where the seniors could come in and have that feel, but it helps the landowner maybe get a little more density. I'm just painting a picture. The question is, I'd love to work with them, maybe giving some parkway detail along the front there where their park might be along the front, so it keeps that corridor open and feeling correct. But then we do work with them with a little bit of density as it starts. But you're going to have to start with 1 acre kind of coming forward. It might go R140, R130, R120 coming up into it. Now, I don't know if we get denser than R120. The question comes, do you put a commercial spot right there at 6,000? And that, I'm not sure. The only single standalone commercial that's going to work there is either a gas station or a grocery store. I don't know if that's what the one single. I don't see a strip mall going in there. I don't see a large commercial going there. I think you'll get residents. But that will be, we have to decide how we get that so they can develop. Patterson keeps coming in asking how to develop this. This is the parcel. Patterson's the landowner. They have rights. But yet right now it is zoned R140 as large lots. That's what they bought it as. And that's what stayed since they've owned it. Now that's my vision is to try to keep, we need some areas for seniors. We need but the senior housing's not assisted living, unfortunately. I understand they proposed assisted living. Residents were not excited about a 4-story assisted living coming in there or apartments for seniors. They seem to be okay about more of a senior type where it was twin homes or a 4-unit put together, but it kept it low, and it kept that density feel lower too, but they got a little more density. That's just.
And just my add to that is you've seen the Charleston and you've seen the Covington in Lehigh. Those are not 4-story. Those are 2-story high. And they are really built nice to accommodate the community in looks. And there's very low traffic and no need for excessive parking.
So that will be the question for the council and planning commission. I think we got to paint really good pictures here, guys. This is the parcel that if we leave it vague, we'll get vagueness in. We've got to nail it down and try to help them. Does that make sense?
I could add a comment on top, sorry. I was just going to kind of relate to what Sam said earlier. They've asked us, what the staff think we should do here, and we've tried to look at the feedback. We're not trying to propose that, you could do nothing with this and it stays R140 and it stays single family residential lots. And you could do that forever. It's what it currently is. And they'll just put homes on there and that'll be fine. But if you want something else, this is the time to do it. If you want a green space buffer that we couldn't otherwise ask them to put in, things that they, under R140, they don't have to do for the city. If we want some of those things, then there would have to be some kind of negotiated zoning arrangement. And it's what does that look like? And I guess the first question is that something we want other than just R140? Something that's a little bit different, something that's a little more unique. If that's something we want, then what do we trade for it? And that's kind of what the mayor was getting at. So is that commercial or is it not commercial? Is it density? So that's what Landmark and staff and all of us have been trying to figure out. So this is just us throwing an idea based on some of the feedback. Obviously, we have a lot of strong preferences for single-family residential, and it can just stay that way if you want. But I just want to throw that little pitch in there.
I just had a question. Seems like most of the input is no commercial there. Are the asterisks there because you met with the Pattersons and they wanted that there because you guys are planning this? Did you meet with all the landowners up and down SR92 or so? You're meeting
The
with the
Pattersons
Pattersons.
actually attended the last open house.
Oh, I'm sorry. He just said he met with the Pattersons, so I didn't know if that was a straight-on meeting with the Pattersons. Yes, it was.
We did have a focus interview with the Pattersons to
Yeah.
try and understand some of the history of this property.
Right.
But we didn't arrive at any conclusion with them.
May I ask, what other landowners have you met with? Like the Buellers, they have a large tract of land, not near here, but some of the other larger. Okay.
They're in the county.
No, I'm talking about the Buellers.
They are in the
Yeah,
county.
Understood.
Can I ask a question of Rob? So we talk about senior housing all the time, but on times when I've been on the on the council, Sky Estates, for example, up in the northwest end, they put in a bunch of townhomes in one section, and they talked about it being, quote, senior housing. I don't know if it is or isn't, but at the same time, Ridgeview was developed, and they talked, well, we're going to put some senior housing in there. How do we enforce it if we say, hey, you can put senior housing? How do you make sure it's senior housing? Because it usually seems like it doesn't end up that way.
I think the terminology has been a problem in the past. We've said senior targeted, and we need to see that as it's not senior. It has to be senior restricted. And you restrict it 55 and older, and I think we're good to go. Rob, is that something we could do?
Can we enforce it?
Can we enforce that?
Yes, it is enforceable. So it would be something that's as part of a negotiate. Again, it's not something that the city can impose on a property, but they could agree to restrict the property for a 55 and older community. And there's a Federal Housing Act. You have to go through a process to do it, but then they enforce it. They have to require identification. There's a number of units that have to be, or a number of occupants of units that meet that age group. A lot of what we've seen from Ridgeview was age targeted, where it's like, oh, it's smaller and it has a lot of like single floor living, so it'll be more attractive to a certain community, but it's not, they have to move there, or that's only people who can live there. So that could be something that we could enforce. It would just require buy-in from the property owner to do so.
And it's a trade-off as we're negotiating with that property owner for lot size, et cetera. So senior restricted, I think, will be important for us. And what the mayor was saying about that, I couldn't agree more. I 100% am on board. I'm not sure I'd like to see any commercial in there, but that's just me. Because of the very thing that Chris was talking about. Chris, by the way, can talk all day, and I just want to listen. He's got a most beautiful voice. So anytime you want to chime in, Chris, you just keep chiming in. I'm entertained over here. But what he had to say is very important in my view. And we've got to be really careful in how we couch this so that we don't get the problems that Jerry's talking about. Because that's very real. We could bastardize what we've got, and we don't want to do that.
I also was here when they Patterson brought in the senior living. The biggest pushback on that was that it was like 3 or 4 stories. Do you remember that?
Right.
Like it wasn't a fair example of the community wanting or not wanting it. It was the fact that it was 4
So
stories
tall.
high. So
Which
that would-
none
that
of
would
our
be a-
surrounding communities have agreed to have either, like
Right, but
the
I'm just saying
Charleston
that was the
and the
biggest
Covington.
pushback when they.
It's because of the sample they chose to show. It wasn't accurate.
That was a comment I again was going to make is a town home is not a senior living home. A senior living home has to, seniors now, I'm not a senior yet.
Single story.
Seniors now are old people. You know, I mean, people are living longer, and usually when you get up that old, you don't want to climb stairs, or you can't climb stairs. Single family, level is a senior home of any kind. And if you call it senior, it has to be single level, 1 floor. And also, like, I like the idea of the, like, a couple of us, at least 2 of us here have a mom that's in assisted living. And it could be single floor senior living even. I mean, assisted living that could be sprawled out. We've got a huge parcel over there. Put it in the back and put the senior home single floor in the front, you know, or whatever to make it look cohesive or whatever. But so we really could put assisted senior living and all that in and have it work really well if it's true senior. Tuscany was going to be senior and young people. It's 3 stories and the stairs are this wide. I don't know any seniors, true seniors. Like, again, I'm not counting myself as a senior. Even though I am, I'm not counting myself. But, you know, people you see that really don't walk well and they need a home. But I really believe single story, no question, or it's not a senior home.
And no museum.
So what is it you guys are needing? What can we help you guys with?
This would help. Okay, so if I interpret this correctly, what the group is kind of coming to is we'd like to keep this property residential only. We'd like to include a provision of senior housing that is deed restricted and that is in character in terms of height with the surrounding neighborhoods. Right?
But I want to make sure that goes with the community. Like, I mean, we did all this community outreach and everything like that. And so we all can sit around and say, this is what we want, but we just need to make sure that that coincides what the overall residents are wanting as well.
And I think overall it does from the feedback from the survey, right? That they were supportive of these uses, primarily wanting to see that larger residential lot. That was the biggest percentage that was selected. So, you know, we could suggest that a percentage is used of this to be senior housing, but the bulk is set aside for that larger lot housing. Might be a way to kind of get some specificity to it. We can add in some other specifics. I hesitate to like master plan it. I think that's the job of the property owner. But does that sound like an agreeable path forward for this overall? Okay, excellent.
That's our hardest parcel.
I know.
Well, and one thing we really haven't talked about is when that's developed, you're going to have a lot of traffic coming in on 6,000 West, which is already a problematic road. So I think in the general plan or the master plan or that we need to address that road. And you can't put, even though the mayor's talking about R120, which is half-acre lots, which is a big lot, but I think you have to be careful how much density you do put into that property. Just for the traffic flow on that corner with 6,000 West, there's always a wreck there.
There is. It's one of our more dangerous intersections,
yeah.
4,806. So I would recommend that if we're looking at entrances, that we push it back off of SR 92 a little bit, so they're coming in on it versus them. Because right now, just the way our traffic flows coming off that side, that mountain from Alpine, and that if you're in the morning, the lanes just back all the way back up in. And so there will be a congestion on 6,000 West to turn on to SR 92. Now, I know, Chris, you live right there, so you can probably share all the details about the traffic, but we just need to be careful that we are stacking traffic right now.
That inlet that is now where people park cars to sell illegally on the highway in front of the Longhorn property, would that be an entrance into it? Is that something, because we need to not funnel
That
everything
parcel
to
is actually
6,000.
owned by Intel, correct? That's a water area for Intel, so that you're talking where they put
Texas Instruments.
No,
are you talking
it's
the
actually
the
where
inlet?
the
Well, that
sidewalk
inlet could
ends.
be another point. The other thing we have to be careful. We have our cemetery across the way.
Yeah.
You know, so when we talk about getting busy, that we want to go put a lot of commercial and going, I don't think people envision being at the cemetery and seeing a big commercial sprawl. And I think that's a little bit why we have to be sensitive. We do have our cemetery there, but that's where directly across from our cemetery,
Yes.
there's another little inlet. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
That should probably be able to be accessed in and out. I don't know. I don't know if we'd envision a light there, because that does slow it down, but that would. Yeah, it might be.
I have a question for staff. Can you explain to us again what the process is from here? So you're collecting feedback. It sounds like we have a lot of different ideas. My guess is if you were to have just a public hearing for just Longhorn property, you would get more people involved than if we have a public hearing for the general plan. So I'm just interested to know exactly what the process looks like going forward as far as collecting input and then making decisions about some of these smaller things we've been talking about, like, or bigger things, but like flag lots and the development of this property. Because once it's in the general plan, then we're very tied to that, right? So we want to make sure we're doing it right.
So to some extent, it's up to what the commission and council want to do. I mean, Landmark has a contract with us for a certain amount of time and a certain amount of work. Obviously, as staff, we can hold more public hearings and do it on individualized topics if you want, or we've done a lot already. We could say, it sounds like based on resident feedback and commission and council are pretty close on some things, we'll just tighten up some of the language here on some of those, overall topics. But on the Longhorn, maybe we want to have, you direct us to say, hey, let's just have a public hearing on this and say, we have this one item that we get updated based on this meeting. Give us some thoughts on this, public. I mean, it's kind of open-ended. Sam can talk more about the, hard process of the general plan. We do have public hearings and more feedback regarding this. You'll have a draft plan presented in probably a couple months or so. And then we have to do a public hearing round and might do some last-minute tweaks and then push it out for actual adoption. But in the meantime, we can do whatever the council and commission want us to do.
I just feel like we've already gotten the feedback. I mean, we did this whole process. We were able to get the feedback. And sometimes I have a little bit of a hard time saying, hey, we want to hold a public hearing just on this parcel, because then who's going to come out is just the people that are directly in that area. And the great thing I love about this general plan, it is for all residents so that they can have a say on their city, and not just for a specific group in a specific area. So we're getting feedback across a whole instead of just a small minority group.
So it's also up, ultimately it's the planning commission makes a recommendation and the council makes a decision. So you can I think Landmark's done a great job of summarizing all the feedback and the public engagement we've done. You can base your decision on that and say, your own personal experiences and history informed by the kind of feedback you got from the residents, and just give us a direction to go.
Can I just ask something? So we had this big survey we did for the whole city, and it addressed some of these issues. And so there was some good feedback there. But in these individual meetings you've had, there's been various people come, sometimes the same person. But as I read through all of your stuff, a lot of the things are single digits. So it's not like there was a huge group of people that came. There were some very interested, engaged citizens that came, but again, very small numbers. So I think most of the feedback we've got is from the big survey we did. And so, at the same time, I'm not sure we've had all that much direction other than the survey, so.
Also, we talk about sometimes the neighbors are the only ones that care or that come out, and I think that we certainly can't, give to the neighbors only, but I think the neighbors are the ones who are going to see it, use it, whatever, the most, and have to live with it. So I think we should hold some credence on what the people around these areas that we're talking about have to say. Not to give in, like I said, but consider and work with them on it. Because they're the ones who see it and use it every day, or see it and have to, deal with it every day, or whatever.
Has there been discussion on designating it as a PD district? I think one of the slides mentioned considering that, but is that, that kind of leaves it open-ended, but also up to the council's discretion as far as residential zoning and whether or not to include commercial.
That was going to be our suggestion, was to make it a PD district, yeah. The Longhorn area, yeah. As well as this state property that is also on screen.
Because then we don't have to get as much in the weeds, if I'm understanding the designation correctly. It kind of protects us, but also doesn't force us to make too many big decisions right now.
Yep, puts up some safeguards without getting too detailed or prescriptive.
I've been trying to figure out a time to bring this up, and I figured since my microphone's on, part of the general plan, at least, it's included, on the city's website on the same page, is the Highland City's design standards document. And it kind of just goes over the commercial, retail, office, residential, town center overlay zone, and establishes design standards. Is that something that we are also looking to update, to revisit, being as they are design standards? Design standards tend to age pretty quickly, and some of it's really good. But I didn't know if that's something that is completely a separate beast or something that we wanted to also address.
Rob, wasn't that something you said that that was something the planning commission needed to consider?
So that's separate from the general plan, but it's one of those things I think we should update after we do the general plan, informed by the general plan. It's one of those legislative documents that more guides development, so we should, general plan, didn't revisit this because you're right, that one's actually quite outdated from the last time it was updated, so.
And it just says in that first part of the general plan, it is to promote attractive and cohesive development through an ongoing iterative process of aligning design guidelines and policies. So that seems fairly
broad,
nebulous, which is probably by design, I'm guessing.
What I'd love to understand, and I'm impartial as to what our neighbors would like to do, but I'd really like to know what the citizens feel in general about the notion of we want to focus all our energy on making the town center, this thriving, booming area, or abandon ship and just, do commercial development willy-nilly everywhere, all along the place. And I mean that sincerely. I have an opinion about things, but we live in a city of 20,000, 19,000 people. I'd
21.
love to know what how many voters do we have? About 5,000, 6,000-ish? I don't really know what the number is, but...
Over 9,000.
Okay. I would love to, I know we can't compel this, but it would be great to find out if we could have 2,000 or 3,000 people chiming in and saying, yuck, we don't like the city center, kill it, and let's move everything out to Longhorn or to Ridgeview. And I just don't know what people's opinions are about
I
what
think
can
that
help
ship
us.
has sailed, though. I mean, we can't, with the property owners, you can't say, oh, we're now going to shift our. It's like here we have Highland Main's going in, and they're starting to spend millions and millions of dollars. Also
Yep.
saying, oh, by the way, we're now moving everything over here. If you're a property owner here, you'd be screaming, hold on, I just got sold a bill of goods and I invested. So I'll tell you, Temp Tires is a good point, a case in point. Back 25 years ago, when the city started painting a picture around the town center, all the businesses, by the way, were supposed to be here. Did you know the bottom half of Toscana was all supposed to be businesses? Does that mean, so what we painted, everyone should come into town, into Toscana, and everything should have a business, should be a hair salon, an insurance thing, and then all the businesses should be surrounding here in our area. So you had Temp Tire that bought in, you had the guys over here with with the Olive Red's things, they bought in. Well, we've kind of started moving away from them, and then they keep going, well, hold on, I bought into your plan. The first owners of Toscana bought into the plan. We just got to be careful of, I think what your question is, if this is the town center, we've got to support the town center. And if we start moving it, then but we have had this view and things. I mean, Scott, you remember, I remember if you go over to Toscana, I actually tried to go move possibly a business in the bottom at one time saying, I'll move my business.
They were supposed to be businesses.
But there was no bathrooms down there because you were supposed to be owner occupied. And so I'm going, okay, if I want to buy it now and rent upstairs, there's not a bathroom in the downstairs, even though there's an office and a garage. And then going, okay, so I have to owner occupy. And I think there was two that did do that. I think there was a hair salon that did open at one time, but they haven't stuck. I'm just saying, it's this concept. We got to be careful what we're painting here because people buy in, and then because right now we're supposed to have an office building across the way here that's for things, but they're not really quite sure they want to come because it is sitting inside. You know, we have I think it's attorney's office trying to build here. You know, we did paint that this is where some of our seniors. Now, if you really go look where some of our seniors are at, are right here in the town center. You go up to Sky Estates, you don't get Highland seniors up at Sky Estates. If think about some of you live up there, they're not people from Highland that moved there. Those who from Highland moved here. Why? Because there was open space here. They got that open filling here. They bought into it. Sky Estates did. We tried to do a age targeted over by Ridgeview. We really haven't got the senior community there, even though some of those houses look a little bit that way. I'm just saying, we got to be, that's why we're trying to paint the picture so people know we have to stick to the vision. You start messing with the vision too much and it messes around with people.
Kurt, thank you for saying that. I have a strong opinion. I agree with you wholeheartedly that this should be the town center. But then what we can't do is say, oh, well, we can have commercial here, commercial there. We got to focus people on trying to make this successful.
And that's how all the little cities died. You know, all the other cities in the country, that downtown areas died because of all the malls coming in and all the other stuff around it. But there is there's a surge for rebuilding the cities now again, the town centers, the city centers, in that case, a town center. But I agree completely that if we start, you know, here we have this nice mains coming in and all this, and then we start saying, okay, you can go here and you can go there and over there. I think we're not a big city. You know, we're small enough that no matter where you live in this city, this town, whatever we are, you can go downtown. You know, downtown's easy. I can walk. I'm over a mile away. I'll walk it, you know. But I think we really do need to concentrate on commercial in the town center, and then whatever we can do to, you know, for the outlier and to keep it the way the people want it.
Was this town center placed because of an earlier master plan? Well, there you go. At that time, they thought it should be here. Now we think it should be. It gives you the power of getting there first.
Now, I think we have to discuss another commercial node that we have opened up is over by Ridgeview, in that Ridgeview area. There might be, you have, I think on your next slide, the state property here, your state property. We have to decide, do we want to keep the add-on commercial node there? It's going to be on the other side of the Murdoch Canal. I think that's your next question is the council and planning commission open to having a commercial node over there off of 4800 West? We've already got Costa Vida. We've already got Arby's here. We've got a couple other small things. Are we interested in adding more in our commercial node here, or do we want to keep that residential?
So I can add to that because I'm on the governing board of the USDC, and we're redoing our master plan down there as well. And that area, which is in Highland on by North County, is being designated as possible commercial, and then some south of that as well. The land up behind, there's a lot of discussion going on because they're still in the middle of their making their new general plan too. So
Scott, what you're saying is maybe we could look at another commercial node right where your
it's
stars
right on
are.
the, yeah, right there.
And I think there has been discussions from a large retailer. Now, we actually did an economic study. It might be now 5 or 6 years old. We could only support so much of commercial except for one thing. Now think about this. We could support restaurants. What is Highland Range trying to bring in is restaurants. Now, over in this area, we did not study this area about commercial if we could support it. This seemed to be a different commercial thing. When we look at our traffic study, this one thing that surprised me in our traffic study is Alpine also comes through Highland. We're seeing almost 50% of traffic from Alpine coming down 4800 West. We all think they're just, 80% are going down SR82. No, they're starting to show a heavy presence down 4800 West. And so I think you're going to see a natural commercial node, if we desire to open it, would be in this area where Scott's talking. The state owns this property, so some of it will have a say, some of it we won't. But there might be a large commercial user, a large grocery store or something with others that open up where and if we want to embrace that, we put that in our master plan.
Yeah, I mean, there's commercial all around there too. Cedar Hills, that's the big commercial area. It's already a commercial place. And if we did have any interest in any kind of bigger, like their Walmart is a nice Walmart. And if we could, if they had Target or whatever else wanted to come in, that would be the place because that's what's there now, already, as long as it's a small one like the others. But I think just in keeping with what's there and what it looks like, commercial is logical, even though I like the towns, I want to keep the town centers the main thing with the restaurants and the boutiques and the whatever else we have. But anything big could go over there.
Well, and it should be noted because it's now been stated in a public meeting, Smith's is looking at this location. At a USDC meeting here, I think it was in December, they even gave a presentation to
It was November, but they're actually looking south of our property.
Okay, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
be there. Okay. So our parcel is about 25 acres. How large is that parcel, Scott?
100 and about 175 acres, the whole USDC. But our property, Rob and I looked at it. It's about around 40 acres, isn't it? 40, 45. That's in Highland.
But we are hearing the larger commercial node might go into American Forks portion in front on 4800. But we'd have to decide if we want to do a commercial node in front there to support that larger use. I'm just saying that might be another commercial node that could open up.
Can I ask one more question, Rob? So can you explain to me how the general plan interacts with city code? For example, in city code, like a hotel is not even an acceptable use. So if we put that in the general plan, then does that become part of code, or then do we pass separate ordinances about lodging? Same thing with something like a flag lot, which I believe we don't allow right now. And so then when we talk about those in the general plan, I'm just wondering how that interacts with city ordinances.
So it's to serve as a guide for future ordinances. So, you could adopt something in the general future land use map that says the Longhorn property is going to be, 17-story skyscrapers. It doesn't have any effect until you actually put that into a zone. But what you would get is, and I think this is what Commissioner Abbott was kind of talking about earlier, when you put in the general plan, it kind of sets an expectation of if we do something that matches that, you will accommodate our requests for it. So if we talk about lodging, though I don't think it's going to make it into the end, but say ADUs, the detached ADUs, we put in here as something, this is something we could consider. Doesn't necessarily that you will adopt it, but it is likely going to say that you're going to consider it. What the regulations, the framework you're going to put around that is still entirely up to again, a commission recommendation and then council decision. So it says, we will be considering these things as future and likely adopting it. I mean, I'm sure there's things I can point to in our current general plan that never got realized. Ultimately, it's a plan. You try to do the best you can to make it accurate, and sometimes it doesn't pan out that way. So it's not locking the city in, but it is definitely setting an expectation of how the city is going.
So then you just adopt code as needed going forward.
Correct. Like our modern income housing talks about detached ADUs, talks about we'll consider doing certain things, so we will get to considering them, but the end result still isn't clear.
Thank you.
Am I correct in understanding, Rob, that you said that it doesn't lock the city in? It doesn't lock the city into doing things, but there are some cases where the general plan locks the city into not doing things. I mean,
Correct.
We can't violate the general plan. We would have to amend the general plan before doing something. Am I remembering that correctly?
Correct. There's a few
Okay.
things. There's state law that says basically the general plan is advisory except in limited number of cases. Among those are typically streets. So we had our large 4800 West discussion. We had that discussion because the general plan marked it as a lower classification, and we couldn't widen that unless the general plan actually allowed for that. So it was a general plan amendment that had to be done first. There are times in our code where we actually point specifically to the general plan, like we adopted our parkway detail in the general plan first, and then we said in our code, put in parkway details per our general plan. So you can specifically point back and make it enforceable, but without that kind of enacting legislation, it's advisory with just those limited exceptions.
So at some time, I think it would be nice to have a list of what those things are that do tie us to things specifically for later.
Sure. We'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll wrap things up with this last discussion on highway transitional areas. So based on what we've heard, a majority of residents have expressed interest in expanding the city's commercial base. And the idea behind these highway transitional areas is that they could be appropriate areas to consider zoning for mixed uses. Potential uses could include missing middle housing. So this is housing that is home scaled, but it's between a single family home and a high-rise apartment building. So things like duplexes, triplexes, green courts, just homes that fit that missing middle definition. Redevelopment could occur in these highway transitional areas. Neighborhood scale retail, offices, and residential professional uses may be considered as appropriate. Development in these areas should support Highlands housing and economic goals while also providing a transition between that protected low-density residential housing and then anything that's a higher impact commercial use. And as per your existing general plan, strip commercial development should continue to be discouraged. So this image is meant to show some areas to consider for highway transitional areas and then imagery that could represent those mixed uses that would be appropriate for these areas. So giving you flexibility for infill redevelopment into the future in areas that probably aren't ideal for housing.
I think we've talked about Timpanogos Highway. It seems that one's not a go, but what is the general feeling about this concept in other areas, and is this a worthwhile idea or something that we should hold for another day?
Audrey, can you
Is it
turn on
off?
your microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank
I thought
you.
it was off. I just wanted to know which of these areas that you have highlighted are actually owned by the government and UDOT, so that it's something that we have discretion to do.
Are you saying in specifics to highway widening? You're concerned about that piece, or? Mhm. Yeah, and I don't think we're suggesting through this idea that the city would play that active role in purchasing property here, unless that was a desire of the city. but more that land use ordinances would be perhaps modified to allow for mixed uses in these areas that are currently just zoned residential. So
I think it would just need the wording in there that it could be conditioned upon the state of the town center. Like if the town center was cranking 90% and it's making, and it's like, wow, if we can get bigger, then we entertain. I just don't want to be a blanket thing that goes out to the public and they come right in and say, okay, we want to do this. I just want the ability to say, yeah, we're not going to do that because we're only 40% occupied, in our town center or whatever. I just want to be able to.
Amen.
Now, so as I look at 4800 West, so here we have, two different nodes you're talking about. I think 4800 West from the Charleston going south seems reasonable to look to be commercial. We've already have the Charleston. We've added a couple other commercial in that area. That seems reasonable down through that area. I think what you're hearing from the Planning Commission and Council is, what do we do along SR 92 and down Alpine Highway?
I agree with the mayor on that. I think that's a different corridor that doesn't necessarily affect the town center because there's already a Walmart and other commercial there. I think that makes good sense right there. And it's two different areas.
So I think we do need to be honest, though, about discussing. So when they widen Timpanogos Highway as you enter the town center, on the north side, and UDOT owns some of those homes, it really looks blighted. And so the question is are we going to maybe have better housing there, or do we want to do some commercial development? I mean, the consensus is we don't want to do commercial development on the Patterson property, but does it make sense there? Because it's really kind of distracting from the rest of the city, I think. And because it looks a little blighted, but yet those are nice neighborhoods farther north. But just along Timpanogos Highway, where the UDOT bought those homes, they're rented from the church that goes farther east. Is there some kind of something we can do better there, or approach UDOT and say, can we buy that area? I'm not the city, but can it be developed for something else? It just doesn't look good.
I think, Scott, as we look, so if you come from the Patterson going to the east, we do run into problems where it's, like you said, it's UDOT, it's actually water district owned. The ownership is, you might have a handful of property owners, but we start getting into municipality or other government entities that own parcels, which is, they become a little bit blighted look because they're not being maintained because of who the ownership is.
Right.
So,
but from that church that's on
the Avamore
Timpanogos,
Church,
which is very nice, but if you go farther east to town center, that just along Timpanogos looks fairly blighted.
Scruffy. Yeah.
That's actually owned by Lehigh City Irrigation or Lehigh Irrigation Department. Right, directly north of the church there.
No.
Avamore, north of that Avamore building, I believe, is owned by. Am we thinking right?
No, it's it's the property opposite Mark.
Yeah.
That's owned by Lehigh. So just to the east of where we have our pine nut flag selling guy, but to the north of it, last time I checked, it was UDOT, where Mathany's used to live, and then.
Rob, did UDOT do a trade there with in Texas Instruments?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
Actually, are you talking about the corner opposite of the Longhorn property?
Corner to the east.
No, he's talking east of Avonmore building. So where the Mathany's.
Well, there's two. The one's by where the guy puts all this flags up. I thought that was owned by Texas Instruments on the corner of 6000 West and SR 92. But then Avamore building directly to the north, is that not a water district that owns that property?
Avamore building to the west, or
Going to the east.
Or to the east, yeah. I was gonna say not north. That's all neighborhood. Okay.
Oh, you're right. Actually, it's Lehigh City. They must have bought that. Yeah, you're spot on. And then the next one over by Monson, that's UDOT.
And I think the reality of how these would evolve is piecemeal, right? It's piecemeal and infill opportunities at best. It's not. Let's be clear about that. That's probably what we're looking at.
I think the concept in the highway transitional areas is a good one. I completely agree with Jerry's point that we need to provide clear guidance in the general plan that we're not talking about expanding out commercial into these areas until we've used up the town center. But some of the other pieces, the redevelopment, maybe some missing middle housing, to Scott's point, that may be an option immediately for some of the things. I like the concept with that one tweak.
I just think it'd improve the looks of the city, if that's a possibility. Yeah, because it looks blighted.
So can I ask, we're talking about, originally we're talking about from like the dentist office or whatever it is over there, that last building past the car
The
wash.
dentist office till you go west, there's a church there.
Yeah,
So that-
yeah, west to
and
the
a house,
church,
yeah,
that
yeah.
whole, I get that, yeah, it's all like
It's just right
fields
there.
now.
You know, they tore out houses, then they
Right.
bought other
So
houses.
who
tore out
owns
the trees.
all that property? from the
Along
dentist
there, I
office?
think it's UDOT, isn't it?
How did it turn out?
Didn't
UDOT owns
buy
that.
those houses along the edge of?
There's like
Tim?
fields
Yeah.
for the most part now, just weeds and stuff that's all been torn,
Right.
so many have been torn down. Okay, yeah, so that's, yeah.
So I think one question we need to answer is we have the corner of SR 92 and Alpine Highway. They're in that northwest corner is where Highland Mains is coming. So that's commercial. The question might be, is that gap between where the white church is at and Alpine Highway, there's probably about 4 or 5 homes. That, that's a question, is do we want to look at that as a commercial node as well as behind where Harts is at? I think that's what you guys are earmarking.
That was when the asterisks.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
I think that's this area they're talking here.
Are the areas you're talking about, Mayor, the asterisks we showed in the town center?
I think
Yes,
they might.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So you
The
got those
asterisks, the
answers
pink
we need
asterisk.
there?
Yeah, right there.
One more.
Just go back.
Go back.
There we go.
It was those pink asterisks, right?
There it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are
I
kind of
think-
overlapping synonymous areas, right, with this corridor.
Well, I don't know what anybody else
And
thinks.
I
but
also
think
really
that's
like
okay.
the ones south on North County Boulevard, heading out of Highland, entering into American Fork. That area is absolutely logical and a great place to focus on commercial.
Yeah, and it also addresses, I think, just as big a concern in the surveys as promoting appropriate economic opportunity and commercial opportunity is traffic, is minimizing traffic and making sure we aren't doing anything to compound any traffic problems. And so putting it there is kind of a win-win.
Restaurants, that was always brought up.
But anything big, that's the perfect area, I think, or anything like big, like a small Walmart, small whatever, like what's already up there, that's perfect area for it, rather than trying to fit something like a Target in our town center. That's all commercial already, it's logical. There's some logic to this.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. All right. Next steps. We've talked tonight about some of these ideas, and we really value your feedback. Thank you for your comments, questions. We've taken a lot of notes here tonight. So we'll be, as we move forward into the next step, which is drafting and refining the plan document, we'll be taking that to heart and making adjustments to our approach. We will be meeting again with our advisory committee to kind of check in on some of these issues, make sure they're feeling like that we're headed in the right direction. And then, as was mentioned, there will be the draft plan will then go to review with an open house, and we'll come back to this body for further review and comment before adjusting that again to develop the final plan, which will be submitted for adoption. So that's sort of the process leading from here. So
Can I make one last comment? Because we never ever talk about this, but there's a piece of Highland that's on the east side, a little appendage up there, that's up by the mountain, that's kind of surrounded by Cedar Hills. we never talk about what we want to do with that land, if anything.
I think a Christmas light show.
You know,
it's where we put it's where we put our like the city thing where we went and lit the side of the mountain. It's on the side of the
so
mountain.
if you bring up the city map,
it's above
this
the golf
appendix
course.
here.
It's above Cedar Hills Golf Course.
Is it the conservation
That-
area kind of?
Yeah, that conversation.
Because there's the property owned by the Forest Service, right? And then as you transition this
Yeah.
way, there's kind of this
So it's
area we're
part of
calling the
Highland,
conservation
but
area.
there's a golf course partly in there.
Is this where the gravel pit was?
Well, it's up above the gravel pit. So
Oh,
on the north side is the road that goes up American Fork Canyon, but Highland kind of wraps around and Cedar Hills is around it. And I think part of their golf course is on that.
Yeah.
It's not the part that's identified as conservation area. It's on the far east that's identified as open space.
Yeah, open space. That little, right there.
The other thing we don't have in the general plan is that gravel pit.
Yes, that's
I wish I had a
Brittany's.
pointer.
Brittany, can you please fix that?
This is point.
Please fix that for us.
Thank you.
Right there.
Oh, can you? Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. Okay, so that, Aubrey, what can you say about that? It's steep. I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah, we'd have to look into that. I'm not sure.
I think we've assumed that it's an area to be preserved, just due to its steep nature and interface with wildlands. But do you have other opinions, Scott?
Well, no, I've just wondered about what we would ever do with it. And I've often wondered if we shouldn't just let Cedar Hills annex it. But
You don't let anyone annex.
I know. Don't quote me on that. But I've often wondered what we're going to do with it.
Let the goats and the sheep have it, the wild goats and sheep. That's
Island
they
City.
come down.
That's true. We could do a big park.
Hey, before we conclude, may I bring up a totally unrelated topic?
Please.
So there's a great deal of effort talking about a east-west corridor north of SR 92. And it's just referring to, you'll see in your plan, you've actually gone to great effort to highlight it.
Is it the North County Boulevard?
No, it's a east-west corridor.
Oh.
So 11200 north.
No, he's talking about 11200 north. Do you mention that on any of the slides?
You don't have to necessarily bring it up, but I just want to make a note. 11200 north.
Chris, that is something I have highlighted. We're going to have a very specific discussion about 11200 North as part of the transportation map
Right.
because it needs to be decided what's going to happen with that.
Correct. Yeah, and I don't mean to belabor the point. I just wanted to raise a pinky and say, could we please just have that down as one of the TBD items, please?
I agree that if there's anything lacking in our transportation-wise, it's east-west corridors. I mean, we've been horrible at it, and we've gotten a little bit better with Canal Boulevard, but we got a long way to go.
Well, Ron, just so that you know, I'm on the other side of the fence with regards to opinion about that, but regardless of where we wind up from a policy point of view, I just want to make sure we don't omit discussion.
Yeah, well, when we don't have enough sufficient east-west corridors, we end up with the kind of traffic.
So
all bottlenecked on SR 92 and Canal Boulevard. We just need other options.
So in our transportation plan, I think what everyone's saying is we need to address 11200. Currently, it's in as a through road. We need to make a final decision what happens 11200.
Okay. All right. And we will be sure to relay that to our transportation consultant. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much for your patience with us. And
We like all you've
we really
done
do
so
appreciate
far,
being
yeah.
able to meet with council and hear what you guys have been talking about and what you guys have been concerned about, and especially in the areas of Highland that you live. how it affects you as well. So thank you very much. And thank you, city, for your cooperation and collaboration with all this as well. We appreciate it. Okay, our planning commission and staff communication items are future meetings, February 4th, city council at 7 p.m., February 18th, city council at 7 p.m., and February 25th, planning commission, 7 p.m. Rob, is that transportation discussion going to happen at the next meeting or no?
No, it's when we get the transportation map,
Okay,
we'll address it as part of that. So it'll probably be part of the future big discussion about the plan. But no, we've highlighted that specific one to talk about.
okay, perfect.
I'll let you know when that one's coming up.
Okay, and then just a question really quick, is there a deadline that the city IT people want cybersecurity stuff done that we need to know about?
There's a training every quarter.
There's a
meaning
training
that
every
you'll
quarter.
receive, or yeah, it's all online.
Yeah.
You'll be invited through email to participate. So January through March and so on.
Can I make a request? If we are getting anything from the city and you are forwarding information, can you please, as one of the city administrators, put your name at the bottom and stuff so that you know? I'm receiving so much spam email. We all are. We don't know what to open.
I always do.
Yeah, so I received something about today, and
It's
I'm
rather
like, I referred
unprofessional
it back
if
to
you
you
send an
going,
email
I'm
at-
not touching this.
and not
So-
put your name on it. So you
Perfect.
can.
We need like a code word that you use.
Okay, if it comes from me, the code
bologna
word is
sandwich.
$25 gift certificate. If
25.
you get that, just make sure it comes my way.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just
bought
put
quite a
bologna
few of
sandwich
those
in the
for
subject line.
You are welcome to participate in the trainings. They're more for our staff who are on our network and here at City Hall, where we pose a higher risk than those of you who you're on the city's email, but you're not tied into the network that could cause some serious damage.
Perfect. We didn't understand what level our participation need to be. Perfect.
So if we don't do it, we're not going to get kicked off like it said.
No.
Good, yeah.
All right.
You're volunteers and we appreciate your service and we don't want to make life any harder for you than it already is.
Yeah, I don't open anything.
Perfect,
like,
thank
unless
you.
I just don't even dare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Planning commissioners, is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Can we vote on that, please?
Second.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, it's been seconded. She seconded.